Yeousch!
It's a rare thing for a game to create an atmosphere that is engrossing in a way that feels truly new. Rarer still for that atmosphere to be complemented by gameplay that meets its lofty standard. From the visuals to the puzzles, from the music to the storyline, the Swapper is one of those rare games that hits the nail on the head on all sides. Placing you in the shoes of a person stranded on a seemingly abandoned space station, the Swapper doesn't go out of its way to explain what's going on. The vibe is immediately haunting, with dark, cold colors setting the tone. The impressive score is sparse and consists mostly of ambience, but complements the atmosphere perfectly. Very soon after starting, you're given a device that creates clones of yourself and enables you to swap your consciousness between them. This becomes the core mechanic that you rely on for the entirety of the game. The basic gameplay premise of the Swapper is not too unfamiliar. It's a side-scrolling puzzle platformer. You will spend the majority of your time in this game deliberating through puzzles in which you create clones and swap between them to collect orbs. These orbs are then used to pass through checkpoints and progress through the game. The puzzles themselves consist mostly of using clones to activate switches and reach the orb, but there are several factors to consider. For one, all of the clones move simultaneously. If you move left or right, jump, or grab an object, all follow exactly. So it'll require a good bit more thought than just plopping a clone on a switch and moving on. Also, you can only have a set amount of clones deployed at once. You'll often find yourself wishing you had just one more clone to do the job, but that's part of the charm. The other main factor to keep in mind is that a clone, on its own, cannot collect the orb to solve the puzzle. You can only collect the orb if you have swapped into that clone. Lights also play an important role in the Swapper. You cannot create a clone in blue light. You can create one in red light, but the red light will block your ability to swap through it. Purple light plays both parts, in that you can't create a clone inside it or swap through it. Navigating all of these issues throughout the puzzles in the Swapper is quite simple for the first hour or so, but the difficulty greatly increases as you progress. There are some extremely tricky puzzles late in the game, so you'd be well advised to take breaks and come back with fresh eyes if you get stuck. Thankfully, the difficulty ramps up at a satisfyingly consistent rate. Just as you're getting the hang of it, you're thrown a curveball that makes you think of things very differently. And while you'll be very challenged, you're rarely overwhelmed. It might seem strange at first to use a mouse and keyboard with a platformer, but in this case, the controls feel right at home. They're similar to those popularized by the 1996 PC game Abuse, in that the keyboard moves the character and the mouse is used always to control where the character is facing and where the Swapper device is aimed. Using the mouse for aiming allows for the precise control that many of the puzzles demand, and using the keyboard for movement doesn't feel too awkward because, thankfully, the Swapper is not overly demanding with precise platforming. This game does it right. The puzzles are about thinking and reasoning, not about jumping from the absolute perfect pixel. The perfectly paced puzzles are just a part of this game's allure. While the cold, dead presentation that the game begins with is quite effective, it still manages to diversify through rundown research areas to lush green areas that appear more alive. You'll even have a couple of short diversions while flying through zero gravity, using your Swapper to propel you along. There is even somewhat of a Metroidvania vibe here, in that there are areas you will not be able to reach at first, but will return to later. There is only light implementation of this mechanic, but it does serve to help the space station feel sprawling and complex, and keeps the game from feeling too linear. And you're also given a teleportation system that can instantly send you to select areas of the map to keep the travel from becoming too monotonous. Through it all, there's a palpable feeling of discovery. Through coming across research logs and journal entries, you will learn progressively more about what happened on the station, and about the Watchers, rock formations that appear to be sentient. This is where the game delves into some deep issues. It's not afraid to ask questions like, what does it mean to be alive or to die? What is consciousness? It's a surprisingly thought-provoking and complex story, complemented by rather well done, if rare, voice acting.
How did you get back here? Why are you following me? Look, it's too late now to apologize. Just let me go.
It all ramps up to an ending that you're most certainly going to think about. It seems that the only complaints that I can muster about the swapper have logical counters. I wanted more of the game, as it is quite short. It can be finished in about 5 hours, depending on how much trouble you do or don't have with the puzzles. But then, because of the game's short length, it never gets old or monotonous. You're glued to the end. Plus, Facepalm games are only asking for $14.99, so the dollar value is easily intact. I also would have liked a bit more fleshing out of the story. But again, part of the game's mysterious vibe is brought on by how little it lets you in. It gives you just enough to chew on, no more, no less. Finally, I wanted more of the amazing soundtrack. I found myself disappointed when the music would fade away when stuck on a puzzle, because that would have been the most appropriate time to be serenaded even further. So with all that out, here's the bottom line. I'm giving the swapper a score of 4.5 out of 5. This is an awesome game and my first real surprise of the year. The cloning and swapping puzzle mechanic is not only brought to its wonderful potential by the carefully crafted puzzles, it works hand in hand with the complex and thought-provoking story. The atmosphere, from top to bottom, is perfect. Visually striking, beautifully scored, and strongly acted. What few negatives I could identify are all things that I just wanted more of. The music, the story, the game itself. That speaks volumes for the quality in all parts of this game. A lot of love went into it. And seeing as this is the very first game from Facepalm Games, we should be watching this developer closely. Something tells me that they're going to have more in store for us, and we should be excited.